My name is Olivia Parker, and if you saw me today, sitting in my glass-walled office overlooking downtown Seattle, you'd probably think I've always had it all together. My assistant just brought in a fresh latte, the silk sleeve of my blouse brushes softly against the polished oak desk, and my phone keeps buzzing with notifications from partners waiting for my approval. To most people, I'm a picture of success, confident, composed, unshakable. But what they don't see are the shadows I carry. The memories of being unseen. The times my voice was dismissed in the one place where I wanted it to matter most, home. Just as I lean back in my leather chair, my phone buzzes again. This time, it's not another business deal. It's a name flashing across the screen I haven't seen in months. Mom. My chest tightens. For a second, I consider ignoring it, letting it slide into voicemail like I've done so many times before. But something, maybe the quiver in my own breath, makes me swipe to answer. Olivia. Her voice cracks, fragile in a way I've never heard. We need your help. I close my eyes, letting the words sink in. My parents, who once ignored the biggest win of my life, who brushed off my dreams like they were childish fantasies, are now depending on me. And though part of me aches, another part feels the quiet, ironic twist of fate. I wasn't always Olivia Parker, the woman with the skyline view. Once, I was just a 17-year-old girl standing in our cramped living room in Portland, clutching a certificate that felt like it held my entire future. It was the day I won the National Young Innovators Award. For months, I had poured myself into a science project that combined renewable energy with low-cost housing. I had spent sleepless nights soldering wires on the kitchen table, borrowing library books, and testing prototypes until my fingers were raw. When my name was called on that stage, when the trophy was placed in my trembling hands, I thought, this is it. This is the moment my parents will finally see me. I came home beaming, my cheeks still flushed with pride, the glass award pressed to my chest.
Mom. Dad.
I won. But Dad barely glanced up from the TV, a football game flickering across the screen. That's nice, Olivia. But, stuff like that doesn't pay the bills. And Mom, folding laundry, only sighed. Sweetheart, focus on real things, like college applications. These little contests won't matter in the long run. Her words sliced through me sharper than broken glass. The lump in my throat burned as I forced a smile, nodding like it was no big deal. Inside, I was crumbling. That night, I sat on the porch with tears streaming down my face, my trophy balanced awkwardly on my knees. It was then my grandmother, Evelyn, came and sat beside me. She had always been the quiet anchor in my life, the one who noticed things others didn't. She placed her weathered hand on mine and whispered, "Don't let their blindness define you, Olivia. Winds are seeds. They don't always bloom right away, but if you keep watering them, one day they'll grow into something no one can ignore." From her pocket, she handed me a small silver pendant, a simple compass charm on a chain. "Whenever you doubt yourself," she said, "remember, you already know the direction. Just follow it." That night, I made a promise to myself. If my own parents couldn't see me, I'd make the world see me. Their dismissal didn't extinguish my fire. It fanned it. And with that, I decided I would stand on my own. When I left for college, I carried two things with me: my grandmother's compass pendant and the silent promise I'd made on that porch. My parents thought I was chasing an impossible dream, but I knew better. I didn't need their approval anymore. I needed results. The first years were brutal. I worked double shifts at a bookstore and cleaned offices at night just to keep the lights on. While other students laughed in dorm hallways, I was hunched over a laptop in the campus library, teaching myself coding, studying renewable tech, sketching business plans in the margins of my notebooks. There were nights I cried quietly into my pillow, exhausted and lonely, wondering if maybe my parents had been right. And then one night, everything shifted. I had entered a local startup pitch competition, standing in front of a panel of investors with nothing but a shaky voice and slides I'd built on borrowed software. Afterward, as I sat outside the auditorium trying not to fall apart, a woman in her 50s approached me. Her name was Dr. Marissa Hale, a venture capitalist who had once been an engineer herself. She didn't hand me a check that day. Instead, she gave me something far more valuable: belief. "You've got something rare, Olivia," she told me, her sharp blue eyes holding mine. "You remind me of myself when no one else believed. If you're willing to work, I'll guide you." Those words became fuel. Under her mentorship, I refined my ideas, learned how to negotiate, how to hold my ground in rooms filled with men twice my age who smirked at my ambition. The journey wasn't glamorous. My first office was a dingy garage space with leaky pipes. My first employee was just another student who worked for pizza. I faced rejection after rejection, people telling me I was too young, too inexperienced, too female to build something serious. But slowly, wins began to stack. My first big client signed after months of persistence. My first grant approval arrived in an envelope I almost didn't open, sure it would be another denial. I still remember the shaky joy in my hands as I called Marissa, who only said, "Told you so." Money trickled in, then flowed. What began as a fragile idea in a high school science fair grew into SolarNest, a company designing affordable solar-powered housing solutions. Within 5 years, SolarNest was no longer a whisper in obscure journals. It was being covered in Forbes. And yet, through all this, I kept my family at arm's length. When they asked about school, I gave vague answers. "It's going okay." When they pressed about work, I said, "I'm just figuring things out." I never mentioned the investors, the partnerships, the fact that my name was being invited to global panels. Because deep down, I wasn't ready to let them in. Not yet. Not until the world knew me, the way they never had. The first time my parents came to see me after years, it wasn't out of love. It was out of desperation. When I opened the door to my penthouse apartment, their faces told me everything before a word was spoken. Dad's proud shoulders seemed smaller now, stooped beneath invisible weight. Mom's eyes, once sharp with judgment, were rimmed with fatigue. They looked older, worn down by bills, by life, by choices that hadn't worked out. "Olivia," Mom began softly, almost rehearsed. "We thought maybe we could talk." I invited them in, not out of eagerness, but because part of me wanted this moment. I wanted them to see. The living room stretched before them, bathed in soft light from floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. Abstract art adorned the walls, pieces I had collected from young women artists I mentored. The furniture was sleek, minimal, but warm, with subtle personal touches: a vase of fresh lilies, a bookshelf lined with awards and business journals, a framed photo of me with Marissa at our first product launch. I watched their eyes dart around, taking in every detail. Their silence was louder than words. Dad finally cleared his throat. "This place, it's yours?" I nodded, letting the pause linger. "Every inch." They exchanged a look, confusion and disbelief tangled together. Mom tried to smile, though her voice wavered. "We didn't realize you'd done so well." I walked toward the bookshelf, picked up one of the glass awards, and placed it on the coffee table between us. The golden inscription gleamed under the light: Forbes 30 Under 30. Olivia Parker, founder and CEO of SolarNest. The silence that followed was deafening. I met their eyes, steady and calm. "Remember when I came home with a trophy at 17? I told you I had won something important." You barely looked up. Mom's cheeks flushed. Dad shifted uncomfortably. "That win," I continued, my voice firm but not cruel, "wasn't the end. It was the beginning. And every time you told me it didn't matter, I worked harder to prove that it did. Not just to the world, but to myself." Dad rubbed the back of his neck, words struggling to form. "Olivia, we didn't mean to ignore me?" I finished for him, a small, ironic smile tugging at my lips. "You did. But that's okay. Because your silence became my motivation." I gestured to the framed photographs along the wall, images of families smiling in front of solar homes, children playing on porches powered by panels my company had built. "This is what I built. This is who I am." Their eyes softened, but guilt hung heavy between us. Mom finally whispered, "We're proud of you, more than you know." I let the words sit in the air, sweet but bitter. For years, I had dreamed of hearing them. And now, hearing them when they needed me, I realized the power had shifted. They weren't here to celebrate me. They were here because their savings had run dry, their house was under foreclosure, and for the first time in their lives, they were depending on me. The irony was sharp, but instead of anger, I felt something else, a calm strength, the kind you earn only after years of walking through fire. I leaned back on the sofa, crossing my legs with deliberate composure. "So," I said, my voice even, "tell me why you're really here." Their eyes dropped, and the truth spilled out. Dad was the first to speak, his voice low, almost ashamed. We lost the house, Olivia. Medical bills, debts, things got out of control." Mom's hands twisted in her lap as she added, "We thought maybe you could, just until we get back on our feet, help us." For a moment, I only studied them. Years ago, I would have leapt at the chance to earn their approval, to be needed. But now, I wasn't the desperate girl on the porch clutching a trophy. I was the woman who had built something they couldn't deny. I folded my hands and spoke carefully. "I will help you, but on my terms." They both looked up, startled. "You always wanted to be in control," Dad muttered. I smiled faintly.
No.
"I always wanted to be seen. There's a difference." I laid it out clearly, each word deliberate, steady as the tick of a clock. "First, Dad, you have to stop drinking. I know you've hidden it behind Sunday football and excuses, but I see it. If I help you financially, you have to help yourself first. Rehab, meetings, whatever it takes." His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. "Second, Mom, you've spent your whole life putting everyone else down to mask your own fears. That ends now. If I pay off the debts, you start therapy. You find your voice, your joy. You don't tear people apart anymore." Her lips quivered, and for once, she didn't defend herself. "Third, if I bring you into my life again, you don't get to dismiss me. Not my work, not my choices, not my worth. You treat me with respect, or the door closes again." The silence that followed was heavy, but this time, it wasn't painful. It was powerful. They sat across from me, two people who had once held all the authority in my world, now listening like students to a teacher. For the first time, the balance had shifted. Mom's eyes glistened as she whispered, "You sound so strong." I touched the silver compass pendant resting against my collarbone, a small smile softening my tone. "I had to be. You left me no choice." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Dad gave a slow nod, his eyes wet. "If these are your conditions, we'll try." "We won't just try," I corrected gently. "You'll do. Because if you want me in your life, if you want my support, then this is the only way forward." They both nodded, subdued but resolute. And in that instant, I realized something. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving I was right. It was about reclaiming my story, setting boundaries, and choosing how love would exist between us, on healthier, stronger terms. The weeks that followed surprised me more than I ever expected. Dad checked himself into a local rehab program. For the first time in my life, I saw him vulnerable, admitting mistakes instead of burying them beneath anger or silence. His voice trembled when he called me after his first meeting, but there was something raw and honest in it. Mom began therapy, and though she resisted at first, I noticed small shifts. She started journaling, talking less about what others were doing wrong, and more about what she wanted for herself. One afternoon, she even sent me a photo of a painting she had started, soft blue strokes across a canvas. I stared at it longer than I meant to, realizing I'd never seen her create anything before. Change wasn't immediate, but it was real. For me, the biggest change wasn't in them. It was in how I felt around them. For years, I had carried the ache of being unseen, the bitterness of being ignored. But now, sitting in my office after a long day, the compass pendant warm against my skin, I understood something my grandmother had always known. Winning isn't about the applause. It's about the roots you grow in silence, the strength you build when no one else is watching. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the Seattle skyline, Mom and Dad came over for dinner. We sat around my table, the air awkward but hopeful. And when Mom reached out to squeeze my hand, whispering, "Thank you for not giving up on us," I didn't feel the old sting. I felt peace. Later that night, Alone on the balcony, I held the pendant between my fingers and smiled. My grandmother's words echoed back. Winds are seeds. She was right. That ignored win had grown into something no one could deny: my company, my independence, my voice. But more than that, it had grown into a woman who could stand tall, even in the face of those who once turned away. I took a deep breath of the cool night air, the city glittering beneath me, and whispered to myself, steady and clear. My parents ignored my win. Now they depend on me. And that's exactly how I found my strength.